Chapter 10. Rachel. I don't know why I ran after Marco, but I did. He was chasing a woman who he couldn't possibly be chasing. Maybe I wanted to help him, but that's not what it felt like. It felt like, I don't know, like I liked chasing someone. That's dumb, but it may be the truth. He raced down the escalator, trying to shove past people. I raced down the steps that paralleled the escalator. I hit the floor first. "There!" he pointed. I saw a blonde woman fast walking away through the crowd. A woman pushed a stroller into her path. Marco's ghost shoved the stroller aside and kept moving. Marco and I pounded after her. No question now, she was running away from us. She was the antelope and we were the wolves. Of course, maybe that's why she was running. Many people would find it disturbing to be chased by a couple of demented teenagers. In the main foyer, she broke into a flat-out run, hampered only by the fact that she was punching numbers into her cell phone. She had maybe 100-foot lead. No way some 30-something mommy was going to outrun me. She ran for the revolving door. "Hey!" A man slammed into the glass. She'd knocked him aside. She was slow getting through the revolving door. Stupid, I told myself. She shouldn't have taken the revolving door. Now we've got her. Marco and I reached the revolving door while she was still inside it, just exiting. Marco jumped into the next open section. That's when the woman yanked hard back on the door, spun it backward, caught Marco off balance, and nailed him in the face with the brass push bar. Marco sat down hard. He grabbed his face. Blood leaked through his interlocked fingers. "Hey, you okay?" I yelled to him. "After her! Stay on her!" he yelled and scrambled to his feet. All right, I told myself. The boy can focus. I went through a side door. There were stone steps, about a dozen, 200 feet wide, heading down to the busy street. Business people bustling on the sidewalk below, people coming up and down the steps, groups, individuals. No blonde woman. She couldn't have gotten away. No way. Not enough time. She was here in view, one of the 3 or 4 dozen bodies in motion. Wig. It was a wig. The realization came to me in a flash. Marco raced up, stopped, panting beside me. "She has dark hair," he gasped. I guessed that. He looked back and forth. "I don't see her." "Has to be here." "Look for whatever she wouldn't be doing," he said. "Should be alone. Should be going down the steps. Look for the opposite." I nodded. Yeah, he was right. He was upset, he was desperate, he thought he was chasing his dead mother, and he still figured that out. Maybe I would go out with him. The little guy had a brain in there. "There!" I yelled. She was brunette now, moving with a slow group of old people coming up the stairs. For a split second, I met her gaze. Rage, fury. I hesitated a split second. But a split second later, my own anger answered hers. "You don't scare me, lady." The wolves were on the scent again. The antelope ran. Onto the sidewalk, shoving, slamming, barreling through businessmen and women and UPS drivers and hot dog vendors and bike messengers. We raced along the facade of the museum. She turned a hard right, straight out into traffic. Give the lady points. She didn't scare easy. Yellow cabs screeched. Drivers cursed. Fingers were thrust skyward. She ran, we chased, and we gained. She ducked into an alleyway. Now we had her. The crowds were her cover. She'd be alone. I turned to the corner first, Marco inches behind me. Dumpsters and overflowing trash cans, a pile of empty bottles all in racks. She was not in sight. Only 2 places she could be, behind the dumpster or behind the stack of bottles. I looked at Marco. We reached unspoken agreement. He walked softly, sneakers squishing in filth, toward the dumpster. "Look out!" The tower of bottles tipped. Crash! Wham! Something hit the side of my face, hard. My eyes rolled in different directions. Tears blurred my vision. A dark shape moving fast right for me, a bottle in her hand. Swing! I ducked, kicked instinctively, and caught yielding flesh. My vision was clearing, but I was still wobbly. She was down on her butt. She slammed the bottle down on the ground. It shattered, leaving her holding a broken bottle, all jagged, ripping edges. A deadly weapon. I backed up, heard Marco yell, "Get your hands off me!" Someone had him. A man. A large man. This was going very bad very quickly. I spun. A nice pirouette. Much easier on the ground than on the balance beam. I snatched up a bottle and nailed the elbow of the man holding Marco. Ah! Marco slipped free. "Run!" I yelled and yanked him with me. We ran, back toward the street. But suddenly, 2 new figures loomed in our path. The cell phone. The woman had called for help. Even then, some part of my scared, adrenaline-saturated brain wondered what kind of woman could make a call and have tough guys showing up within seconds. Back! We turned. Trapped. 2 big guys behind us. One guy with a sore elbow and Marco's mother ahead of us. Think fast, Rachel. I slid the toe of my shoe under one of the bottles and flipped it up at the woman. She flinched, and we shoved past her. Great, now all 4 of them were behind us, and I didn't see any way out of the alley. Straight ahead, a blank wall. The alley turned right. We turned right, scrabbling and panting, and now very seriously scared. Dead end. Walls, walls, walls. I tried a door. Locked. Marco tried another. Locked. Overhead, a fire escape, the kind that lowers on springs when a person is descending. It was drawn up, hanging in midair. 7 feet up. The 3 men turned the corner. The woman was gone. I had a feeling it didn't matter. The men looked very serious, determined. I stopped short of the tantalizing fire escape. "Marco, stand right there!" I pointed at a spot on the ground, 10 feet away from the fire escape. I raced over to stand beneath the black-painted wrought iron. Turned, cupped my hands together below my waist. "Are you crazy?" Marco demanded. "You have a better idea?" "Ah!" Marco yelled and ran straight at me. Jumped, seated his foot in my cupped hands. I heaved up, timing the movement to use his momentum. Up he went. Not far. Just enough. He grabbed the bottom of the fire escape, drew it down with his weight. The thing screeched with the strain of rusted metal on rusted metal. I caught it before it hit the ground, and we blew up the stairs, crowding each other, frantic. The springs lifted up the stairs after us, out of reach of our pursuers. But we weren't going to stop and toss off any clever comic book "take that" villain lines. We were going to climb till we ran out of stairs. 3 stories. Blam! Blam! At first I couldn't figure it out. What was that incredibly loud noise? Blam! Blam! "They're shooting at us!" I yelled in outrage. "Yeah? Run!" We topped the fire escape and tumbled over the parapet onto the roof. Just as something really disturbing happened. The men stopped firing guns. They started firing lasers.
Chapter 11. Facsimile. I stood in the empty airlock. The blue blade was long gone. It was time for me to be long gone, too. I considered waiting, but I was waiting for nothing, and I knew it. More waiting would just be cowardice. No one was coming to rescue me. I was frightened. There is nothing wrong with admitting that. A warrior who is not afraid when he goes toward danger is a fool. Fear is the reflex that keeps us alive. I focused on the image of the blue blade, tried to see it in every detail. It was not difficult. I had spent quite a while observing it. I focused, and I began to change. My 4 legs dwindled swiftly. They melted up into my body. The floor rushed up toward me. Suddenly my stalk eyes went dark. I could only see directly ahead of me. No! I reversed morph, demorphed. A momentary panic, that was all. I had felt suddenly blind. The 3-dimensional world had gone flat. Stupid. I was annoyed with myself. Obviously, the creature I was to morph had only 2 eyes. I should have been prepared. I took a last look around. through the transparent wall into the dome, at the familiar trees, at the grass that had nurtured me. I might never return. I might never again stand on any part of Andalite soil. No point in being sentimental, I told myself. You are a warrior now. Unprepared, yes, without a prince or a mission. Too bad, that was how it was. I was alone on an alien world that might be infested with Yeerks, and would most likely offer me no viable means of returning to my home world. A movement. Something out past the door, past the shell of the dome in the ocean itself. It was distorted by the lenses of water and Plex. Distorted, warping in the filtered green sunlight. Bug fighter. The shock knocked the wind out of me. Bug fighter. Yeerks. They had found me. They were here. Coming. Yeerks. I fought the instinct to run back into the dome. No. That is where they would kill me. Without shields up, with nothing but a weak force field, it would be child's play to blow holes through the dome and drown the trees, the grass, and anything else that required air. Morph. Morph. It was the only way, and quickly. My ears flattened against my skull and melted away. My arms slid down the length of my torso, hands flattening, stiffening, sharpening, till they formed matched fins. Following my orders, the computer was filling the airlock with water. Cold. Hurry! I was almost on my belly. My 4 hooves remained, absurd remnants. Then they too disappeared, and I was a growing, elongating cylinder. My upper body tilted down, coming into line with the cylinder. My tail blade split in two, forming an upper and lower triangle. My nostrils drifted across the fluid surface of my face, seemed to crawl across liquefied flesh, to stop just behind my stalk eyes, which had themselves slid down to opposite sides of my head. I heard the sickening slurp and slush of internal organs reforming, relocating, disappearing altogether, being replaced by more primitive structures. My fur that had been melting wax now hardened and congealed, forming the stiff, abrasive skin of the blue blade. Faster! Hurry! It was taking too long. The Yeerks would see the airlock opening. They would see me emerge. I was almost complete. Only one change remained, and it came last. My face split open horizontally. A gash, an open wound. Muscles attached themselves to jawbones, and from those jawbones grew teeth. How many? Too many to easily count. My mouth opened, shut, opened, shut again with sudden, savage force. And then one last thing. One last change. One last gift from the blue blade. Instinct. The mind that went with the mouth. The hatch opened. I swam out into the unbounded ocean. My ocean. Chapter 12. Aximile. I kicked my tail and surged into the water. How to describe the feeling of the creature's mind beneath and within my own? I sensed no intelligence worth noting. This seemed to me a creature of pure instinct. The blue blade was a creature made up of razored triangles in mind as well as body. The instincts were as clean and elegant as a crystal dagger. Move, move, move. Kill, eat, move. And to accomplish these utterly basic ends, I discovered a whole array of weapons that had not been visible from the outside. The blue blade had startlingly acute senses: smell, hearing, and some new sense, something that seemed to be a sort of electrical field awareness. It was as if every living thing near me was pulsing with a distinct radio emission, and I was a receiver. I heard the bug fighter, moved away from it. Fear? No. It was not prey, and there would be no prey near it. A school of smaller finned creatures passed by, off to my right, running from the bug fighter. too small for a meal. I swam, moved, this way and that, casting about for a scent that would jolt my brain. Whoomph! A noise that filled the ocean. The part of me that was still Andalite understood. The Yerks had imploded the dome. It was filling with water. I could hear the bubbles erupting, the tons of seawater rushing in. I could hear the trees snapping like twigs. No going back. Only forward now. I swam. Sounds behind me. Pursuit. Meaningless. I was not pursued. Nothing pursued me. I pursued. More sounds. The bug fighter blew past me, rocking me with its wake. Phew! A blast of energy that set my electrical field senses on fire. I turned. Phew! Heat. Irrelevant. Pain. Irrelevant. I turned and dived. Phew! This time, the Dracon beam missed by a larger margin. They fired again, sliced part of my tail off, but it was an uneven fight. In the water, the bug fighter was slow in the turns, sluggish. I turned in my own body length. The bug fighter dove beneath me. I rose toward the surface, shadows on the bright barrier of the surface, something flying low and slow. Paloosh! Paloosh! They fell from no great height into the water just 50 feet away. I, the Andalite me, recognized them instantly, though I had never actually seen one except in holographic displays at the Academy. Taxons. The only species ever to agree en masse to be infested by the Yerks. They were large worms that moved on dozens of sharp, pointed legs, sat in rows down the lengths of their bloated, vile, pulsating bodies. I could clearly see the hungry red mouths, the red jelly eyes. When they lectured us on taxons at the Academy, they emphasized two things: that any Andalite could slaughter an endless number of taxons in direct combat. The other thing they emphasized was that if we fell before the taxons, our fate would be horrifying. The taxons do not accept surrender. They eat the wounded, even their own. There were 6 of the big worms in the water ahead of me, 6 arrayed in battle formation against one of me. I attacked. I raced for the nearest one. The blue blade sliced through the water, rolled onto its side, opened its mouth, and dug triangular teeth into 2 yielding flesh. I ripped a 2-foot hole in the worm. Sreeah! Taxon blood and organs and bile billowed in the water. Air bubbles seeped from its mouth. A second taxon. Chomp. A third, a fourth. More. I was mad with killing rage. Slashing, darting, flailing like an insane thing. Hitting, biting, ripping, tearing. Out of control. The morph had taken over. The creature was directing the action. No, that made it sound as if it was thinking. It thought nothing. Even its low level of intelligence was wiped away, erased by a screaming, demanding urge to massacre anything it could reach. 6 taxons were in pieces, floating. More were dropping into the water, but these new arrivals saw what was happening and swam directly away from me. No more targets, nothing left to kill. I flailed at nothing, bit and slashed the empty water. I would have bitten myself if I could. And then, suddenly, it was over. The madness gone, replaced by ice-cold indifference. I swam away. My Andalite mind regained control, for now. My first battle. 6 taxons, and I had learned one thing. If the rest of Earth's species were anything like this blue blade, the Yerks had picked the wrong planet.
Chapter 13. Jake. Day 31. Aren't you coming? I shrugged. Tom was framed in my bedroom door. He looks a lot like me. At least that's what people say. They always say they can tell we're brothers. I wasn't going to, I said. I pointed at the books on my desk. Homework. He looked disappointed. Oh man, that's too bad, man. I figured you'd be there. There's some people I wanted you to meet. One of the high-up guys in the sharing is coming. Yeah? I said, trying to sound interested. Mr. Visser himself. I had a sudden mental image. A vision, almost. Strange. A picture that had popped into my head. A head without a mouth. Eyes on something like snail stalks. Whoa. Then it was gone. Weird name, I said. Yeah, well, he's an unusual guy, but very smart, very cool. Look, who's the homework for? Old Lady Hannah? I smiled despite myself. Yeah, for Miss Hannah. Tell you what, you come to the meeting with me tonight, I'll guarantee Old Lady Hannah will give you an A. Say what? He shrugged. She's a member, little brother. That doesn't mean she'll let me blow off homework, I said. Tom considered for a moment. He blinked and kind of looked away, almost like he was embarrassed. No, I don't want you thinking that, he admitted. Tell you what, though. Come to the meeting, and I'll help you do the homework when we get home. Strange having Tom ask me for anything. It was like he was pressuring me. Maybe he was nervous himself and wanted me around as his security blanket. Okay, I said. I shut my book. The phone rang. Tom stepped into the hallway to grab it. It's your honey pie, he said. I flushed. I couldn't control it. I shot him a dark look that just made him laugh. I grabbed the receiver from his hand. Hi. It's me, Cassie. Yeah? Hi, what's up? I was wondering if, I don't know. In the background, I heard a voice I knew. Rachel. Good grief, do I have to do it for you? Do you want to study together? Cassie blurted out in a rush. Is Rachel there? I asked. Yes, but she'll be leaving. Sooner than she thinks if she doesn't watch out. I sighed. On the scale of things I wanted to do, study with Cassie was about a 9. Going to the sharing was about a 1. A -1. But I'd already told Tom I'd do it. Cassie, I really would like to, but... Oh, no problem, she said too quickly. It was only that... Cassie, there's nothing I'd rather do than study with you. Really. Except maybe get some tips from Michael Jordan. But I promised Tom I'd go to this I stopped myself. Tom could be right out in the hall. This meeting. A meeting? Yeah, it's this thing called the sharing. Silence. Are you there? Yeah. Is something the matter? What is it? I don't know, she said. She sounded confused, worried. I don't know. I really don't. I relaxed a little. Not much. You know, maybe you're just upset over this thing with Rachel and Marco. Over them going out? No, over the whole thing that happened with them. You know, Marco thinking he saw his mom and all. The guys with the guns. The what? I slapped my forehead. Rachel didn't tell you? Tell me what? Cassie demanded. Then obviously to Rachel, what didn't Rachel tell me? I thought you'd get all worried, Rachel said in the background. Sorry, I said. Marco hasn't shut up about it, and I just assumed Rachel told you. Jake, I have to go and cause Rachel serious bodily pain. I understand. Listen, Cassie, how about tomorrow night? For studying together. That would be great. Yeah. Go kill Rachel now. I stepped back out into the hall and hung up the phone. Cool. Cassie, tomorrow night. My insides were churning. Oh man, what was I going to talk about with her? Maybe we could talk about why Rachel would keep something secret that Marco wouldn't stop bringing up. And maybe we could talk about why Cassie got weird when I said the words, the sharing.
Chapter 14. Tobias. I was used to the place now. I felt comfortable there. Weird feeling. Weird to be comfortable. I'd been to several meetings of the sharing. Once some new kids started teasing me, but the real members shut them down fast. No one gave me any grief at the sharing. They acted like I was an equal, like I belonged, or at least like I could belong. Tonight was the night. I had to decide, join or not, become a full member or stop coming. It wasn't that hard a decision for me. What else did I have going on? Where else was I going to go? And there was another factor. 2 days ago, I'd run into Andy and Tap Tap again, in the gym locker room. There were maybe 24 other kids in there, so I'd figured I was safe even though this wasn't my regular class and I was only there because I'd missed gym 2 days in a row. I figured wrong. They started to stuff me into one of the taller lockers the football team uses. I was yelling, kids were laughing. Not just Andy and Tap Tap. It was like every kid in there wanted to see me get humiliated. Then these guys, these 2 ordinary kids I'd seen at the sharing, came over. I didn't even know their names. I still don't. One guy said, "Hey, let him go." Andy stopped stuffing my face back with his hand. "Are you talking to me? Let him go." These 2 sharing guys didn't have Jake's easy ability to convince people they were serious. But they were determined. The other guy walked over to a weight rack. He picked up about a 20-pound weight and carried it back to Andy. "Let him go, or I'll bury this weight in your head." Andy blinked. Tap Tap giggled. Class was changing. New kids were arriving. One of them was sharing, too. He didn't even ask what was going on. He just moved in beside his 2 friends. Now it was 3 of them against Andy and Tap Tap. They let me go. My rescuers didn't even hang around long enough for me to say thanks. They'd made their point. That's what it meant to be sharing, not throwing your weight around or anything like some gang or whatever, just the knowledge that there were people backing you up, looking out for you. Bill was still my advisor, only now I was beating him at pool. "I'm going to do it," I said to him. Then I nailed the 4-ball. "Do what? Kick my butt by running the table?" I laughed. "No, I want to join. I want to be a full member." He put down his cue, came over, and gave me a sort of arm's-length hug. He held me out to get a good look at me. "That's cool, Tobias." "Yeah," I said. I was feeling kind of embarrassed. "Now, you know this is a big step, right? I mean, we want you to join. We all want you to be a full member. But there are responsibilities that go along with it. It's not just games and fun all the time." I nodded. "I know. Some sharing guys saved my rear end the other day. I know what it's about." "The individual has to give up something to get something in return," he said. "Yeah, I know. I've been listening to the speeches and all. You trade a little bit of freedom for a lot of belonging to something bigger than yourself." He moved closer and lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Bigger than you can imagine." I felt wary. What was he talking about? "A full member of the sharing is a special person," Bill said. "A rare and special person." He waved his arm around at the room full of kids and adults. "This is just the surface, Tobias. We are about bigger things. We are going to make this a better world." "Yeah? Yeah. Change is coming, Tobias, and you'll be part of it. You have no idea. You think you're just some kid going to school. You have no idea of the untapped potential deep inside yourself. You have no idea what you can become, what you can accomplish." I nodded like I had some clue. I didn't. But it excited me. Scared me, too, a little. But there was something about the sharing they don't tell you right at first. You have a few weeks, a month even, but then you have to choose. You can stay and be a full member, or you have to leave. Leave the sharing. And do what? Go back to my lovely life? I spotted Jake. He came in with Tom. Tom gets a lot of respect at the meetings. Even adults are respectful to him. I caught Jake's eye. He came over to see me. Cool. For once, I wasn't running to him like a little puppy dog. He was coming to see me. "What's up, Tobias?" I shrugged. "Nothing much, except I guess tonight is the big night for me." "Yeah? Why's that?" "I'm going to become a full member." He looked at me kind of sideways. "Congratulations, I guess, right?" "Sure. You should do it too." "Uh-huh. That's what Tom keeps telling me." "So why don't you?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "I don't know. I guess it's just not my thing." "Oh, you're too cool?" He looked sharply at me. "I wasn't trying to offend you, man." "You didn't offend me," I said, sounding offended. "Not at all. I'm just curious. Why don't you want to join? Tom's a member, so it's not like it's just for losers like me." That came out much harsher and more pathetic than I'd intended. "Tobias, you're not a loser," he said, which just made it worse. It's bad enough being a loser. You don't want the winners like Jake feeling sorry for you. "Hey, join or not, no problem," I said. "It's just..." He looked down at the floor, then over at Tom, who was shaking hands and laughing with a group of guys and girls. "I don't know. People start talking about how the individual has to give way to the group. I don't know. I get kind of jumpy. Besides, how can I join any organization where Mr. Chapman is a member?" He meant that last part as a joke, but I didn't want to laugh. "Don't you want to be a part of something big and important?" He shook his head very slightly. "No, I don't want to be a part. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just my own mental block. But anytime someone starts talking that stuff, I start looking for the exit door." "You're a part of lots of things, Jake," I said. "You're part of a team. You're part of your country." He nodded. "No, I didn't make the team," he said darkly. He forced a happy face. "Hey, I'm just down because of this conversation I had. Cassie kind of bothered me somehow. Not your problem, though. So how about I say congratulations and wish you luck and all?" "Okay, cool." "Yeah." Chapter 15. Tobias. There were 4 of us slated to become full members. There was a police officer named Edward. There was a newspaper reporter named Kiko. There was a guy who managed local bands. His name was Barry. And then there was me. Why me? The question was impossible to avoid. How did I fit into this group? Was it really true that the sharing didn't care if you were young or old, male, female, black, white, Asian, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, atheist, straight, gay, rich, or poor? I mean, that's what they said. But lots of people say that. They don't always mean it. Mostly, people look for ways to treat other people like dirt. They put us in a small room, dimly lit, like a dentist's waiting room, only with mood lighting and no magazines. There was the door we came in, and a door that hadn't opened yet. I looked at the others. Edward and Kiko paid no attention to me. Barry nodded. They must have been wondering what some kid was doing there. Adults have an automatic prejudice against kids. They never take kids seriously, even when they pretend to. At least that's my experience. I said hi to Barry. "Hi, kid. What's your name?" "Tobias." "Good name. You like music?" "Sure." "Ever hear of Format C's colon?" I shook my head. He looked disappointed. "Yeah, well, you will. Next big thing. You heard it here first. They just need a break. We've got a video, but we can't get any play on MTV." I nodded like I cared. "I guess you need that, huh?" "Absolutely. They say they can help." "Who?" "The sharing. Who else?" Ah. The door opened. The door that hadn't opened before. Mr. Chapman, our vice principal at school. So far, my meetings with Mr. Chapman had been in his office, him asking me to tell him who had beat me up, or who had pantsed me and shoved me into the girls' bathroom, and me refusing to tell. "Kiko?" Chapman said. She jerked to her feet, straightened her trimmed skirt. Chapman gave me a friendly wink and led Kiko away. Barry fell silent. He was nervous. The policeman wasn't in uniform, but I knew he was a cop. My uncle has been arrested a couple of times in his life, and cops are the one thing he really gets passionate about. He's always pointing them out, so I know a policeman when I see one. Basically, I figured if my uncle hated them, they were probably all right. It set my mind at ease a little seeing him there. I mean, if he was joining, it had to be okay, right? The door opened again, and I jerked involuntarily. It was Bill. "Hey, switch to decaf, man," he joked. "Sorry. Let's go." I stood up. Barry gave me a nod of encouragement. The cop just stared blankly ahead of him. I walked through the door. Bill led me down a hallway. Suddenly, in the middle of the hallway, he stopped and gave me a mysterious look. He pressed his hand against a small rectangular panel set about chest high. Suddenly, a door appeared. It opened on darkness. We stepped through. Not completely dark. There was a red light, metal stairs leading down. I hesitated. Bill laughed. "Don't worry, it's just a bit of melodrama." Down, not far, 3 flights, to a landing and another door and another hallway, another door. Open. Inside, a table, 6 chairs. Chapman sat at the head of the table. Beside him, imperious, impatient, almost menacing, was the man who had spoken at the meeting earlier, Mr. Visser. Kiko sat to Chapman's right. She smiled at me. A weird smile. The side of her face spasmed suddenly, but then she was smiling again. In one corner was a sort of metal tub, like the whirlpools the football team uses. Stainless steel, just big enough for one person. There was some sort of harness or whatever on the lip of the tub, and a steel chair. "Tobias," Chapman said. "Yes, sir? Bill tells us that you are ready to become a full member of the sharing." I nodded. "Why do you wish to join us?" I shrugged. Because, you know, what they're always talking about. What Mr. Visser was saying. Being part of something greater than myself. Part of something big. Chapman glanced at Mr. Visser. Nervously, I thought. Mr. Visser took a deep breath. "Is all this necessary?" Chapman said. "Receptivity is helpful, Visser. There is less chance of problems later." Yes, but get on with it." Chapman forced his features back into a pleasant smile. "Are you ready, Tobias? Is this what you truly want?" What I wanted? I wanted to fly. To spread my wings, catch the breeze, feel my talons leave the branch, soar as the thermal raised me up to the clouds. What? Bill nudged me. "Yes," I said. "And you will surrender yourself to the sharing?" "Yes." The image had been so strong, so real. Flying high, seeing through eyes that were like telescopes. Chapman nodded to Bill. Bill held my shoulders from behind and guided me to the whirlpool thing. "Sit there," he said. I sat. The chair was cold. The surface of the liquid in the tub was still. Dark. Heavy-looking, as if it maybe wasn't water. No big deal, I told myself. Lots of organizations have weird initiations and stuff. No problem. But I felt off now. The vision, what was it? Some desperate fantasy? "Place your right hand here," Bill said. I placed my hand in what could only be a shackle. A handcuff. My insides were churning now. I was placing myself totally in their power. What was I doing? What was I doing? Bill fastened the cuff. Now your left hand. No, this was insane. No, this was wrong. No. Handcuffs? I looked pleadingly at Mr. Chapman. He was the vice principal. He wouldn't be part of anything bad, would he? But Mr. Visser was in the way. It was his bored face I saw. I placed my left hand. Bill fastened the cuff. Now lay your head down sideways in the harness, Bill instructed. What is this? I asked. What are you doing? I mean, what's going to happen? Your whole world is going to change, Tobias, Bill said soothingly. You will see and know and understand everything. I don't think I couldn't breathe. A voice in my head was screaming, run, run. My mind was reeling. I think I changed my mind. Bill suppressed a smile. You want to leave the sharing? You want to leave all of us? All your friends? After all we've done for you? Okay, Tobias. But what will you do then? Where will you go? What's your future? My heart was pounding. I don't know, I said desperately. There is no I, Tobias. What are you? One lonely, messed up kid. No one loves you. No one cares. No one but us. Put your head in the harness. I shook my head wildly, firmly. No, I don't want to do this. Bill smiled. He laughed. Well, guess what? It's too late. He grabbed my head in his two hands and shoved it down. No, Mr. Chapman, no! Chapman got up and came over. He helped force me down. I was screaming, crying, yelling now. Helpless. My hands held firm. Let me go, let me go, let me go! The harness was closed over my neck, around my head. I couldn't move it. I could barely move my mouth to beg for mercy. Bill and Chapman stepped back. There was a whirring motor somewhere close. The side of my head was forced down toward the surface of the liquid. No! You see, in the end we have to use force, Mr. Visser said. True, Visser, but we only have this problem in 21% of the cases of willing members, and there are 64% fewer incidents of contested control with voluntary hosts. I know the statistics, Mr. Visser snapped. Just do it. I have 30 minutes left before I have to demorph. I heard all this like it was coming from far away. I listened, hoping to hear some note of mercy, some sense that maybe this was all a terrible joke, a hazing, something. My ear touched the water. A moment later, something touched my ear.
Chapter 16. Facsimile. Look, son, I just want to try and help you. But I can't help you if you don't talk to me. I had lived on the surface of planet Earth for several days. I had accomplished some things. I had observed that a species called humans were the dominant life form. This had taken some time. For one thing, I wanted to guard against the problem of cultural prejudice. Coming from a relatively large species myself, I tended naturally to look first to species that were of a similar size. I didn't want to be a victim of my own expectations. So I deliberately investigated a number of other fairly ubiquitous species, but none of those species possessed even rudimentary technology. I considered a species called cows. In places they were numerous. But despite their superficial similarity to my own species, I determined that they were not highly intelligent. You're making this awfully hard on me. How can I prescribe for you if you won't even talk to me? I know you can communicate. You've communicated with other patients. Yes, I said. I can communicate. Kata? I can communicate. Is it not time for cookies? In the end, it became clear that my first instinct was correct. Humans were the dominant species. I had acquired a human morph, and I had learned to pass as a human. In fact, I had been asked forcefully to adopt a particular location as my primary residence. You have to at least give me your name. I am called Hey Moron, Hey, moron! The human before me closed his eyes and used his 5-fingered hand to rub the flesh stretched across his forehead. Then he rubbed the back of his neck. Then he exhaled breath through his mouth. He was called Dr. Duberstein. Early in my stay at this location, I had not fully understood his function. Now I did. That's not exactly a name. That's just something someone called you. Ah, when will I receive the cookies? They are delicious. Well, to tell you the truth, the nurses don't want you around at cookie time. You made quite a scene yesterday. This was disturbing news. No cookies? He shook his head back and forth and looked at me with his 2 small eyes located on the front of his face. No cookies. Then I must go elsewhere in search of cookies, I said. The cookies formed by 2 thin, round black discs with a layer of adhesive white substance between them are the finest accomplishment of your species. My species? I had made a mistake. I had allowed my agitation over the cookies to cause me to be careless. This was not the time to reveal myself. Humans use their mouths for eating, much as the blue blade, which I learned the humans call a shark. But humans possess an incredible sense that goes beyond anything the shark could boast. Taste. Taste. And such tastes. Cigarette butts, bologna sandwiches, grape juice, Vaseline, and best of all, the indescribably vibrant, mind-altering, overwhelming taste of cookies. Especially the cookies formed by 2 thin, round, black discs with a layer of adhesive white substance between. Someday, I hope my fellow Andalites will be able to visit Earth and morph to human simply for the intense pleasure to be had from eating cookies with a mouth. I meant our species. You said your species. Evidently I am insane. May I go now? The human raised his hands vertically and said, Why me, Lord? Why? I left the small room and went back out into the larger room where numerous humans wandered back and forth, holding discussions using mouth sounds. At first, I had assumed that these discussions were being transmitted by some sort of very small communications link, since they were addressed to persons who were not in evidence. Later, I understood this as well. The humans had various names. 2 of them were named Elvis Presley. One was named John. He was the one who had first witnessed me demorphing. It was an accident. I'd hidden within a small enclosed area, used for voiding biological wastes. But John had caught me. He had seen me in my natural state. He had seemed unsurprised. John told one of the nurses that I was an alien, and for a moment I was quite concerned. But the nurse seemed bored by this fact, and it seems that many of the residents of this particular group habitation are aliens. It took me several days before it occurred to me that the humans in this group were not entirely like the broader spectrum of humans. They suffered from mental illnesses. But on balance, they seemed less aggressive and hostile than the humans portrayed on the 2-dimensional audio-visual display screen, called a TV. So I stayed with them. But now, if there were no more cookies, I would clearly have to leave. In any case, it was time for me to be about my primary mission, whatever that was. I waited till darkness, when the orderlies turn out the lights, and the first Elvis Presley sings an awful musical composition about a place called Heartbreak Hotel. I demorphed. I used my tail blade to slice open the steel wire mesh that covered the windows. I was out in Earth's night, wiser about humans and about cookies, but no closer to finding an answer to Elfingore's fate or a way home. Humans lacked the technology for zero space travel. Their spacecraft was laughable explosive devices used to propel satellites into orbit. They were centuries away from Z-space travel, which left me just two possibilities. One was to hope that some Andalites survived and were present on Earth. The other possibility was only very slightly more likely: the Yeerks. Were the Yeerks on Earth? I didn't know. I knew that they were in orbit. I knew that they had located the sunken dome ship. But were they engaged in a conquest of Earth? And if they were, what were the odds that I could steal a bug fighter and escape? I needed a plan. I needed to learn whether the Yeerks were here. But how? How? TV. I had come to understand at least some aspects of human technology, in particular their communications technology. They have telephones, which communicate only the spoken mouth sounds of their primary communication. They have an inexplicable artifact of which they are absurdly proud, called the Internet, which is evidently meant to be a sort of adjunct to other more effective technologies. They have books, of course, models of efficiency, and they have TV. TV is immediate, pervasive, and transmits sound, images, and text. In my time at the Residence for Insane Humans, I had learned to locate structures within the gridwork of streets. I knew the location of a television studio, and I knew at what time they would begin a live broadcast of news. My method of discovering whether the Yeerks had infiltrated the human species was quite simple. Show them an Andalite.
Chapter 17. Tobias. I felt it enter my ear. I've never felt anything like it. It wasn't that it was painful. It wasn't, not really. But something was crawling into my ear. Into my ear. No, help me! Someone help me! Mr. Chapman, you have to! Bill, help me! It wasn't stopping. It kept writhing, forcing itself into my head. I could feel it through a numbness. I could feel it inside my ear deeper. Oh, God, in my head. Let me go. I'll do anything you want. Let me go, please, please. Deeper. Then I felt the first tingling sensation of a new presence. A mind. I didn't hear it, didn't see it, but it was there. There and touching my own thoughts. Suddenly my hands, which had been clenched in rage, relaxed. The fingers hung limp. I felt a chill, cold as death. No, it couldn't be. All at once, memories were spilling out, like I was thinking back over my life, only I wasn't. I didn't want to. I was sitting there standing, hovering. I don't know where I was, but I was there watching as my memories were replayed at hyperspeed, tumbling, spilling out. My mouth said, I have him. My mouth had moved. Lips, tongue, throat, all had worked to form words I didn't mean to say. Let me up. This is rather uncomfortable, my mouth said. My voice. I heard my own voice with my own ears, but I hadn't spoken. Had I? Was I losing my mind? Report, Mr. Visser said. Only he wasn't Mr. Visser. He was Visser 3. Not a human at all. An alien. Okay, this was all a dream. This was all not happening. None of it. Aliens called Yeerks who infested other species? Insane. I was dreaming or something. My mouth said, Odret 177 of the Kulat Heshpool, reporting for duty. A Yeerk. In my brain. In my brain, scanning my memories, moving my mouth, rubbing my chafed wrists, stretching my fear-strained back. All of them, it's what they all were. Chapman, Bill, Tom, all the full members. Them and thousands more. Policemen, politicians, news people, businessmen, teachers, writers. And kids. Why kids? Because kids are never suspected. They can be used anywhere. I tried to look at Chapman, but I couldn't move my eyes. I wanted to scream, but my mouth, my vocal cords, it was like being paralyzed. Paralyzed and no one even to know that I was there, frozen inside my own body. Out of the corner of eyes I could no longer aim, I saw Bill smirk. He leaned close. I know you can still hear me, Tobias. Now do you see what I meant? You have to give something up human to be a part of something larger. He laughed. But Visser 3 snapped, Shut up, fool. Get out. Bill disappeared from the room fast, very fast. All right, Odret 177. You have your human host, Visser 3 said. Now, what orders do you bring from the Council of 13? The yerk in my head. I could see his thoughts. Not all, but enough. I knew he was wary of Visser 3, but not frightened. This yerk was under the protection of another power. But not the Council of 13. He had lied to Visser 3, or at least twisted the truth. The Council congratulates you on taking command of the Earth invasion, my mouth said. The Council wishes you to know that your request to alter the tactics established by Visser 1 is denied. Earth will be taken by infiltration and subversion. It will not be openly attacked. Visser 1. Yes, Odret was her ally. Visser 1 was Visser 3's enemy. She had been the first yerk on planet Earth. She had discovered the planet and launched the invasion. But Odret was leery even of Visser 1. She told some story of being instantaneously transported from her ship to a museum on the planet. It made no sense to Odret. Visser 3 had begun to demorph. He was becoming an Andalite. The yerk inside me, in my head, the slug creature who had wrapped himself around my brain and gained total control of me, knew about Andalites. They were the enemy. Duplicitous, hypocritical, sanctimonious, deadly, and dangerous. Visser 3 had the only Andalite host body in all the Yerk Empire. The Andalite in question was morph-capable. It made Visser 3 very dangerous. Odret was worried, and Odret was confused. He did not understand why Visser 1 opposed using greater force against the humans. That was not his concern, he told himself. His concern was to stay alive. To do so, I had to obey Visser 3 while pretending to obey the Council of 13 and avoid so angering Visser 3 that his life would end in hideous torture. My life, my very mind, everything that was me, had been stolen. Stolen by a creature who was almost certainly doomed. Bill came back into the room, rushing. Visser, on the TV, right now! What, you idiot? An Andalite!
Chapter 18. Jake. Look, Tom, it's just not me, okay? Yeah, whatever, Tom said. He was mad. He was hurt. He felt like I was rejecting him. It's just that tonight was kind of special, with Mr. Visser being there and all. I mean, right now, probably your friend Tobias is becoming a full member. He's probably already one of us. That's good for him. And for you, I said. I was losing my patience. The whole thing was giving me the willies. But you know what? The more you pressure me, the less I'm interested. We got home. Tom slammed in through the front door. I slammed through behind him. I didn't need this. Just because I didn't want to join some stupid club. I had homework to do. I'd passed up a chance to be with Cassie. Besides, he's not my friend, I said to Tom's retreating back. He's just some guy from school. My mom was in the kitchen paying bills. She had the TV on as background noise, the local news. I entered in search of junk food. Tom started to take off upstairs, and I guess he reconsidered. He flopped down in the family room and snapped on the TV. Some game was on. Hey, Mom, what's up? I said. The electric bill, she muttered. What is going on? Is that some kind of gag? I followed the direction of her amazed stare. It was the familiar news set with the familiar news people. But standing in front of them was something decidedly unfamiliar. It was a centaur. No, not a centaur. Not like it was half horse and half human, more like it was half muscular blue deer, half human, only with a face that was definitely not human. For a start, it had no mouth, but it had 2 additional eyes mounted on movable stalks atop its head, and it had a tail like a python with a blade at the end. "Special effects," I said. "It must be for some movie or whatever." "Tom," my mom called, "turn on Channel 7. Then to me, "I don't think the anchors expected this. They look scared to death." I shot a look toward Tom, illuminated by the glow of the TV in the family room. He was standing up, rigid, staring, but not amazed or amused or curious. His face was a mask of rage and hatred. The TV screen went blank. Up came a still shot saying, "Sorry, we are experiencing technical difficulties." "That was weird," my mom said. "Yeah," I agreed. But I was watching Tom. His fists were clenched. He bolted for the stairs and took them 2 steps at a time. "You want some chicken? There's some in the fridge." "No. Thanks," I said. I headed for the stairs. I didn't know why. I crept up them, moving as silently as I could. At the top of the stairs, I paused, measuring my breath, quieting my heart. "I saw," Tom said into the receiver. I waited, hugged the wall. "It will take 10 minutes. I peeked around the corner. Tom yanked the receiver from his ear. Someone was screaming abusively. I could hear the sound, if not the words. "Immediately," Tom said and dropped the phone. He ran into his room and came out a few seconds later. He was shoving something into his waistband up under his jean jacket. It was impossible to avoid thinking it was a gun. I walked past him, pretending not to notice. He grabbed me, pushed me against the wall. "I have to go out. Cover for me. If Mom or Dad asks, I'm studying. Got it?" I nodded. It wasn't so different from any number of times Tom had playfully put on a similar act. We both knew not to take it seriously. Just one problem. This time, Tom was deadly serious. Chapter 19. Jake. Wherever Tom was going, he'd have to take my mom's car. He wasn't thinking clearly if he thought I could cover for that. My dad wasn't home yet, and when he got home, he'd see my mom's car was out. How was I supposed to explain that? Besides, this was bigger than some concern over getting grounded. Tom was into something dangerous. If he was going to avoid being seen by my mom, he'd have to take the stairs down to the basement, then go out that way. That gave me about 5 seconds lead time. I slid my bedroom window up and shinnied out onto the pitched roof. Rolled down, checked to make sure I was on the right side of the fence separating front and backyards, grabbed the gutter, and prayed it would hold my weight. I dropped to the ground and ran to the back door of the garage. The automatic garage door around the front was just starting to rise. I popped the back door of the minivan, jumped in, cursed myself for making the springs bounce, pulled the door down, and went fetal behind the back row of seats. I heard the driver's side door open and slam. The key? The engine. We squealed out of the driveway, fishtailed onto the road, and blew through the subdivision at 3 times the speed limit. I knew where we were heading, knew it in my bones. We were heading for Channel 7. Too much coincidence for anything else. And Tom was armed. What was I supposed to do? What could I do? Only one thing was sure. I had to stop Tom before he got himself in some kind of serious trouble. He was my big brother, and he was supposed to protect me. But that had to go both ways if he was the one who was in trouble. A gun? Did Tom really have a gun? The idea made me sick. Who owned handguns? Criminals. Pathetic people who thought it would make them important. Nuts. One thing was for sure. If my parents found out, they'd go nuclear. My parents didn't spank, and anyway, Tom was way too old. But if they learned he had a gun, Tom was going to live out the rest of his years till his 18th birthday, locked in his room having his food shoved in under the door. What was he doing? A siren. The cops. Thank God. They'd pull him over. They'd slow him down at least, writing him a ticket. The siren was right behind us. I could see red flashing lights swirling against the seat back. I rose cautiously to peek out. Just as I did, the police car turned off its siren and lights. The cops pulled around us, revving their big engine, and started the siren again. They were escorting us! We blew through red lights, through stop signs, jerked into oncoming traffic. Wait a minute. Was Tom some kind of undercover cop or something? Insane! Stupid. He was in high school. Suddenly the cop car screeched to a halt. Crouched down, I could see the big blue and white Channel 7 logo. Slam! I opened the door, slid out cautiously. Tom was running up the front steps of the 4-story station building. 2 cops were right with him. Both had guns drawn. And Tom? Tom was armed as well. Only it wasn't like any gun I'd ever seen. Absurd, I thought. Ridiculous. It was all part of some elaborate practical joke. Had to be. Because otherwise the only other explanation was that my big brother was carrying some kind of ray gun. They shoved through the smoked glass doors into a dimly lit lobby, already looking like a business shut down for the night. I grabbed a side door, just off to the right. There was a uniformed security guard fretting nervously, obviously not sure what to do. "Hey, glad you're here," the guard said. "There's some kind of I don't even know what it is, but it's in the... Choo!" I jerked in surprise. A bright red lance of light had shot from Tom's weapon. The guard fell back. There was smoke billowing from his uniform. I yelled. Not a word, just a yell of surprise and shock and horror. Tom spun. He peered at me through the gloom. He fired. Choo! Miss. No. He'd shot at me. He'd shot at me. Did he even know it was me? Had he recognized me? One of the cops aimed. Blam, 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 blam! The glass behind me shattered and fell in a hail of shards. The cop emptied his gun. But I was hugging the floor and crawling behind a display bearing artwork. Painting. Photographs. The firing stopped. Holes had been blown through the pictures. By the time I worked up nerve to look again, they were all 3 gone. I couldn't breathe. My heart was hammering like it was trying to bang its way out of my chest. A ray gun? A laser or whatever. Just like Marco and Rachel. Marco would think I made it all up to top his story. If I lived long enough to tell him. I heard screams from some other part of the building. I heard the strange tew sound of the laser beam or whatever it was. What could I do? I wasn't armed. I wasn't some action hero. All I could do was hide. Hide right here, right where I was, till the cops showed up. Only the cops were already here. So I hid. For half an hour I just crouched, waiting for it all to end. But then something started to happen to me. My hands were changing, flattening out, and orange and black fur was growing, and my fingernails were extending, curving, forming claws. What was happening to me? What was happening? Then, instantly, my hands were normal again. Stress. That was it. I was imagining things. Freaking. Losing my mind. There came the sound of yelling, loud protests, cries of rage and fear. I peeked again from behind my flimsy protection. I looked through a bullet hole that had made an extra eye for a portrait of a woman. 12 guys, all armed, some with guns, some with the laser gun things, were herding 7 handcuffed people between them. The anchor people were among them, makeup turning their faces orange. Tom was there, calmly supervising. Through the smoked glass, I could see a limousine pull up. My assistant principal, Mr. Chapman, stepped out and held the door for Mr. Visser, the guy from the sharing. And then, last to step from the car, was Tobias.
Chapter 20. Cassie. Day 33. Jake wouldn't talk in my house. He was too jumpy. So we went out to the barn. It was Saturday morning, no school, and my dad was at Home Depot buying materials for some improvements in the barn. He'd be gone for hours. Rachel showed up about 10 minutes later with Marco. Jake had called them. Jake didn't waste time. "I was shot at," he said. Marco had just sat down on a hay bale. He jumped back up. "Okay, what is this? Are you goofing on Rachel and me?" "No." Jake had a look I'd never seen before. There was not the slightest hint of lightheartedness in his expression. He was serious, grim, even. He seemed older. "I was shot at, with guns, and with some kind of laser, just like you two." Weird. Once again, I had this weird feeling. Déjà vu. The sense that we'd all been here together. Not once, but many times. Only there was something missing. My eyes rose to the rafters. Something missing. "What is this?" Rachel exploded. "Someone has a grudge against us. What did we ever do?" She peered at Jake. "We're cousins. Does this have something to do with that?" Marco flopped back on the hay bale, like he did sometimes. Like he'd done so many times, and yet never done. He'd never been in our barn before. Jake shook his head. "I don't think it has to do with us directly. Marco says he saw his mom, only she's dead." He saw Marco flinch. "Sorry, man." "Yeah, but it was her. Look, you know me, Jake. You've known me my entire life, practically. Have I ever hallucinated? Have I ever seen something that wasn't there?" Jake shook his head. "No. You are probably the last person on Earth who'd imagine something like that." "She was there," Marco said. "I just don't know how. And I don't know why she wouldn't stop. I mean, any answer I come up with sounds like something you'd hear in a conspiracy chat room. I don't believe that stuff. I don't think the big corporations or the mafia or the CIA or little green men from Mars or whatever are secretly controlling our lives. That's crazy, whack job stuff. But what am I supposed to think when I see my mom and I chase after her and these guys end up shooting at Rachel and me?" "With laser beams," Rachel added. She was pacing back and forth, an almost funny reflection of a recovering raccoon behind her that was pacing its cage. Jake nodded. He seemed like he wanted to say something, but he was hesitating. "What is it?" I asked him. "Maybe I'm a crazy whack job," he said. I think maybe there is a conspiracy." Rachel stopped pacing. "Say what?" Jake sighed. "I was following Tom. This thing happened on TV, on the news. Suddenly, there's this alien-looking thing. Very weird. Kind of cool. Anyway, I'm thinking it's some kind of publicity thing. But Tom is freaking out. Like 8 seconds later, he's grabbed my mom's car and he's tearing out of there. I stash in the back seat. He goes straight for the TV studio. And he has a gun." "Whoa! Tom had a gun?" Rachel demanded. "Did you tell your parents?" "It's past that," Jake said. "At the TV station. He shot someone. 2 cops were with him. They helped him. They shot at me, only they didn't know it was me. They grabbed everyone at the station and hustled them out of there. And Tom was in charge. And by the way, the gun he had?" "Don't even say ray gun," Rachel said. "What are you even talking about?" Marco said. "I thought my story was bizarre." "Tom and the cops dragged those people out of there in handcuffs. These famous news people and all. Then Chapman showed up." "Chapman? Chapman? Our Chapman?" "Yeah, and this guy named Mr. Visser, and Tobias. You know, the kid who was hanging with us for a while. They're all there, too." Marco said, "Why? Why them? Tom, Chapman, Tobias, Mr. Whatever, the cops?" Jake shook his head slowly. I don't even want to say this, but Tom, Chapman, Mr. Visser, and Tobias are all members of the sharing. Aren't they just like some family thing or whatever? Rachel asked. Jake nodded. So they claim, but it's kind of a big coincidence. How about this alien thing you saw on TV? Marco asked. What about it? He shrugged. What did it look like? I don't know, like a blue deer, I said. Only it had a kind of human face and a long tail. Jake looked at me in surprise. You saw it on TV too? No, I shook my head. No, I've never seen it. But I know that it has 2 eyes on top of its head, on these little stalks. No one moved. The 3 of them just stared at me. And I'll tell you something else. He should be here. I pointed to a spot off to one side. My arm was goosebumped all the way up and down. He should be standing right there.